Father John Riccardo and Mary Guilfoyle, welcome to Bismarck, North Dakota. Welcome to the campus of the University of Mary. It's great to have you here.
We're delighted to be here.
No buffaloes. I'm kind of let down.
No, you are they? Farther west. Farther west for the buffaloes.
All right. We still like it.
So you've been here for a week with the priests of the Diocese of Bismarck, and you've been around here. What are your impressions of North Dakota?
Healthy.
Men deeply in love with Jesus and who pray.
Yeah, I actually had a comment. I told some folks where we were, and they said, "So planes do land there," which I thought was a great comment. You know, it's just like the whole idea of the flyover country, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean by the healthy. It's just like there's I mean, normal's a dangerous word, right? But there's a normalcy here that's just, especially coming from some of the places that we travel a lot to, is just very refreshing, hopeful, encouraging.
Well, we've been deeply blessed by your visit here. Eric Severide, who is from North Dakota, remember that news commentator?
Sure.
Yeah.
He said that his home state, North Dakota, was a blank spot on the nation's consciousness. And so we always love to have fancy people like you come in and take a look. We're really grateful.
Coming from rural America was like coming home to a certain extent. I mean,
That's true. This is like home for you.
This is like home, and it felt like I was maybe stepping back 20 or 30 years.
Wow.
And it's beautiful. Yeah, it's a place that reminds us of, not to idealize anything, but how things used to be.
Yeah.
Folks of the heartland have incredible spirits.
Archbishop Chaput gave a talk here when he received the Lumen Vitae medal from the university, and he compared our little campus here to the Shire, which is interesting. You know, the Shire and Tolkien.
Yes.
And I was interested because it was sort of a mixed vision that he provided, because the Shire, of course, is a wholesome place.
Yeah.
But remember that at the end, Frodo says, sometimes I feel like there's a need for an invasion of dragons. And so I think it's a mixed bag to be from a place that's perceived of as being innocent, but where sort of the wounds of the culture are beginning to impinge in serious ways.
And human nature is human nature.
Human nature is human nature. That's right. And the gospel's needed everywhere.
Absolutely.
And you at XXIX are all about the gospel. So I just want to tell you, the University of Mary, all of us here have admired your work as we watched it grow. We're so grateful for everything that you do. And it was a wonderful thing to sort of be caught up in the conspiracy of grace with this Christian cosmic narrative, which you published the text for. And we did an audio project on Prime Matters, the Christian mythic narrative. And I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about how captivated both of us have been by this need to proclaim a biblical worldview and to help people to know the gospel again, to hear it again for the first time, to hear it again for the first time. Can you say just a little bit about how you and XXIX find that effort? How do you find it resonating with people as you travel the world and talk about it?
Yeah, I think the single most common responses we get from people when we preach, and it actually sometimes it's from priests say it, but certainly from lay folks, is either, why have I never heard this? Or that's not the God I knew growing up. Yeah. And I think we've just come to the conviction, increasingly so, that I don't think most people. There's somebody who there's a number of folks actually who would say that people have heard the gospel and they've moved on. I couldn't disagree more forcefully. Actually, I don't think most people have ever heard the gospel. I certainly don't think most Catholics have ever heard the gospel. I don't know where they would have heard it.
Could you say something? You and I have talked before about John Paul II's sense that when you hear the gospel, you should be overwhelmed by it. I'm interested in that because it's deeply moving to me.
Yeah, so the document on catechetics, catechesis tradendae, says that the initial ardent proclamation of the kerygma, so the basic proclamation, is supposed to be such that a person is gradually overwhelmed and then makes a decision to entrust their whole lives to Jesus in faith. And so we go everywhere. We just say, so imagine, Monsignor, you're standing at the pulpit today at a visiting parish or somebody else's Catholic university, and you say, quick show of hands, how many people here have been overwhelmed by the gospel? And you'll get a couple. How many people here have made a decision to entrust their whole lives to Jesus in faith? And you'd be doing one of these. Because I just don't think most people have ever heard it, right? Did you?
It's our experience. I've been born and raised Catholic. Yeah. And I didn't hear it preached in Catholic parishes. And I came to a personal encounter with Jesus Christ when I was in college through campus athletic ministries. And it wasn't until the mid-90s that I heard the gospel starting to be proclaimed and starting to move people. It was actually through you, Father John, when you came to our parish in Dearborn, Michigan in 1996. And it's our experience in parish ministry that our people, our brothers and sisters sitting in the pews would tell us, I don't know this. I don't have a personal friendship with God. I don't know that it's even possible to have that relationship. And when they experience that encounter, everything changes. And that's the starting point for absolutely everything. There's wisdom in going back to the beginning, going back to the basics, and just preaching the gospel. And you often say, Father John, that the gospel is power, not the herald, but the gospel is power. And we get to witness that.
Some guy named Paul said that earlier, but yeah, I just quote him a lot. But yeah, you know, as Mary's talking, we share a lot of similar trains of thought. And I think, because I don't want this to sound like an indictment of our brothers, I think we didn't preach the gospel simply because in the era that many of us grew up in, there wasn't as strong a felt need for it, because the culture was on its way to where it is now, perhaps, but it was still somewhat Christian.
Yeah.
And so you maybe there wasn't a perception that we need to do this, and it was enough to just kind of preach the lectionary.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore.
Well, that's right. That you had told me one time that you abandoned briefly teaching the lectionary or preaching the lectionary in your parish.
Yeah, I asked the Archbishop first, so
right. You didn't go rogue.
We didn't go rogue. That's exactly how I say it, but he immediately got it. He says, so you want to do something like biblical catechesis at Mass? I said, absolutely. He says, go for it. He says, your only choice or decision to make is, do you want to do it in preaching, or do you want to do it after communion where you can have other people come in addition to you? And I thought, wow, you really do get this. Like, it was so refreshing, So we were going to do
82 weeks.
We were originally going to do like an 82-week
serious
immersion in the story, and then we thought that might be a bit ambitious, so we rounded it down to 12.
Well, when you're preaching from the lectionary, the assumption there is that you're reminding people, and it's important for people. It's important for all of us as believers and disciples to be reminded, to have in the course of the liturgical year those moments of our love return to us and ply at our hearts again and all of that. But if you have someone who's never really known the love and the ardor of knowing the gospel, of hearing the saving promises of Jesus Christ, and it's true that we grew up in an era in which there were still the remnants of that Christendom worldview, that Christendom sense there. But of course, that's all receded in radical ways. And now people believe somehow that they've heard just enough of what Christians believe to know that it has nothing to do with their lives.
It's irrelevant.
That's right. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's the very difficult but exciting task that we have, which is to awaken people again for the first time, to having heard the gospel so that they can be overwhelmed by it. Here at the University of Mary, we're working with a lot of young people. And so one of the things which for us about the Christian mythic narrative, the Christian cosmic narrative, the kerygma and the way that you approach it, not with simple technique. How did you say it? That Jesus, that at the fall, what happens in a boring way?
We weren't just separated from God.
Separated from God. That's right. That we were captured. Right. That evokes, and this is what's interesting to us in our work with young people, it evokes that epic sense of things, because we see that as in the boredom and the malaise of contemporary culture, young people are deeply attracted to Marvel comics, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, these sort of epic dramas between good and evil, that has a sense to it, a mythic character to it, if you will, which is captivating. Yeah. And we're looking around at each other saying, we've got the best story of them all, and it's not fiction.
It's true.
And so let's get out there.
Yep.
But do you ever...
And we've made it boring.
We've made it boring. How did we do that? Can you tell me?
That's a gift.
It's a charism nobody wants.
Non-charism.
A non-charism. How have we made it boring?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's because we have part of it maybe is because we ourselves who are proclaiming it haven't actually met him.
Yeah.
And so if I'm just reading a script or I'm telling a story and I don't know the one behind the story and what he's done for my own life and the fact that he's rescued me and liberated me and given me hope and set me out into an adventure, and that my life is part of this adventure, it's hard to communicate it powerfully if you are just reading somebody else's lines.
I would also suggest too, one of the things that that you've done through breaking out the curriculum into 4 words: created, captured, rescued, response. The word captured, as you were talking about, shines a bright light on the enemy and his strategy and his tactics for us. And I think that's life-changing for lay people and for priests who have even said, like, I've never given much thought to the enemy. And there's something very sobering when you recognize that there's 3 people on the stage. There's ourselves, there's God the Father, and then there's the enemy. And that should rouse within us some sense of indignation and anger, where we just respond and go, but you can't have my life.
Right.
But there is this tug of war. And I don't think most people, myself included, until a set of years ago, actually had that experience of this battle going on for my destiny, for my identity. And that changes things. And I think that's what makes what you do in a very particular way provocative, compelling, and gripping for people, that intensifies their desire to respond.
Mary, it occurs to me, even as you're describing that we're angry anyway, even when we think that it's only us and God on the stage, when we forget about the other one, the strong man,
Yes.
when we forget about the real enemy being on the stage, when we think that it's just God and us on the stage, we're angry anyway. And so then there's nowhere for our anger to go except against God or against ourselves. And so there's that powerful truth that there's someone else there who's bent upon our destruction is actually quite liberating. It at least gives us a place to focus our energy.
And I think it resonates remarkably, almost more powerfully with young people than with older people. And here's why. As we get older, I expect to be jaded. I expect to be disappointed. We grow cynical often.
Yeah.
When I'm young, I'm still trying to figure this out, and I'm frustrated. Like, why is this a mess? Like, why is my life like this? Why, you're having these experiences of, I'm not the person that I want to be. Why is this so hard? It's why, for myself as a priest, like every time I talk to somebody who comes to see me, I just, I take my glasses off and I simply say, can I tell you how I see the world after they've told me why they're there? And when a young person is there talking to us, it's usually because something's happened and they're trying to figure it out and make sense of it. And especially young women, the amount of times when they're simply led to reflect on, have you experienced either doing something that you didn't want to do or that you hated doing and you ended up doing anyway, and then tears just flow.
Yeah.
And then to say to them, to help them understand, well, there's an explanation behind that. And it's not just because you're weak. It's because someone's trying to do something to you, which now steers my anger towards that person, right? The demonic entity. And now you've roused me to like, well, I don't want to be part of that. And now so my own experiences of living often and more frequently than I would like, a life I know I don't like.
Right.
So that's identify with that. Suddenly into the picture comes, what would it be like if someone could take you out of that? And then you introduce Jesus into how he does that, and not only how he takes you out of that, but what he does to that thing. And he did that to that thing for you out of love for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how would you respond to him?
And
you'd be like the Magdalene up in your girl's dorm who's just on her knees, falling in front of Jesus saying, you have rescued me. You can have my life.
Yeah.
Because I know where I was,
Right.
and you took me from that.
Right.
And so to be somebody who's able to give them a way to see this and to give them hope is extraordinary.
So as you're saying that, and even as you reference that women's residence hall for our freshman women, I remember what caused us to build that. So this would have been probably eight years ago now. The chaplain of the university was a Benedictine monk. And it was just very clear in prayer that it was time, in discussion with him, that it was time for him to go and do his doctoral studies. But I didn't have anybody else, and so he went off to Louvain in Belgium to study scripture. And I was left here alone on a very quickly growing campus with large numbers of students needing sacramental care. I got a little bit of help, sort of part-time, from a couple of diocesan priests. But for the first time since I had come into this work, I was in the confessional sometimes 30 hours a week. And I was listening to these confessions, and I had noticed that there was a shift. We talk about moving from one age to another age. I noticed that there was a shift because when I was doing high school work, guys would struggle with pornography, but not women. And so here I was sitting in the confessional on my own campus, and I had heard confessions. I still hear confessions, but not at that volume, because now we've got an athletics chaplain and a regular chaplain, and the chaplain of the sisters comes over to help. But I was hearing this huge volume of confessions, and women were coming with with young women with a kind of new species almost of self-hatred and self-loathing and deep shame, deep, paralyzing, corrosive shame. And a lot of it was connected with pornography. And this is why we built that residence hall, because I wanted to place there all over reminders to these young women of their dignity, of God's love for them, of the fact that they're not alone, and that they're warriors. That they're in the middle of a great battle like all the rest of us. And this is why St. Joan of Arc is at the entrance of the lounge right there. And then you go to the top, and in the chapel, you've got the Magdalene, you've got the woman at the well, which is the longest conversation Jesus ever had with anybody. I wanted the women, and I want all of our students to know that their lives are broken, yes, because all of our lives are, but their lives are incredibly precious to the Lord, and that they're in the midst of a great and very, very, very exciting drama. The stakes are high, but it's really, Father Mike Schmitz says that if there's no God, you can do anything that you want, but then nothing that you do matters. Right. But if there is a God, you can't do anything you want, but everything you do matters. Right. And this is the epic sense. This is the reason that having the narrative and the biblical worldview is so important from my perspective with young people.
And I think, to what I love so much about the Christian cosmic narrative or the mythic narrative and how we preach the gospel and how we preach the kerygma is, it's to build on John Paul, if you can do that. It's not enough to be overwhelmed and to surrender. Yeah. The next step is to get mobilized. Yeah. And so here, especially at a college campus, yep. So you take a young woman or a young man, it's like, so I've been rescued from that. And now I've had this encounter. My life's different. But I know there are people back there where I was, and I know the one who can get them out. And I come to realize, well, that one, he loves me, and he's given me gifts, and he's created me for this moment, thus the Joan of Arc line. I was born for this. It's not just true for Joan, it's true for you, it's true for me, it's true for you. So I'm born for this, and there's people back there, I want to go get them. So here I am, Lord. So you get awakened to the person of Jesus and what he's done, and it's not just a story. Then I come to understand these are the gifts he's given me, both natural and supernatural. And now you're going to use me, whether it's as a nurse or as a teacher or as a coach or as a whatever. Yep. And I get to continue this work of liberation, broken, damaged, selfish, sinful as I am. Lord, you want to use me to continue this story. That's the whole point of our name.
Right.
In Acts 29. This is the 29th chapter of Acts. God's writing right now through us in our lives. And, Ignatius comes to realize if they can be great, why can't I? Yeah. That's right. I want to be great. Not for me, not for my ego. I want to do great things. I want to do heroic things. I want to do something magnificent for God. So to see that happen at a university campus, and to all that idealism that's there, that hunger to go make a difference in the world, and then to realize, well, it's not like getting famous or making money. Yeah. Nothing wrong with those, but that's not what it's about. But to get plugged into the drama and to realize like God can use me, not just these people whose quotes are on the wall. Oh, then everything changes. Then you're making saints.
That's right. Dante says that there's a season of life, and it's young people. It's the university season of life, in which there's a particular stupor during which these great dramas and a sense of one's own greatness can get inside of you, you know. And I saw it. I was recently in Costa Rica for some reason, and we went to see like a wildlife refuge of rescued animals or something. And there was a commune of young people, college-age young people from all over the world who had come there on a mission because of parrots. And parrots, you know what I mean? Because parrots had been enslaved by owners, you know what I mean, who had bought them for exotic pets. And so all of that, and they were there to rescue them. And they were deeply convicted. There was an evangelical zeal in these young people who took us around through this kind of little zoo that they had in the middle of the jungle. And I thought, oh my goodness, young people, they've got it. They've got it. And to have the gospel take hold of them. Because
to redirect that rescue operation, right?
That's right. That's right.
Those are cute little birds, but what about her?
Yeah,
what about him?
Right.
Well, you know, the answer, you know, the question that we ask ourselves, the human heart, is what return can I make to the Lord for all that he has done for me? Well, that's going to get played out in a variety of ways. And in a college setting, you have 4 years to do extraordinary things and then to launch them into that. And not, you know, we talk about, you know, pouring into them in such a way that they're world changers.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's in nursing, whether it's in business, no matter what it's in, to watch them recreate the world. You know, you can garden with them for 4 years, you know, and then send them out. And all of us want to do something great. And we say all the time in Acts 29 that rescued people. We boast of all the things that all of our different accomplishments. If something mighty has happened in our life, we want to tell everybody, whether you've landed that job or you've graduated with that degree or whatever it might be. But the greatest thing is that we've been rescued. And there's something palpable about that word rescued. It pops off the pages of scripture now for all of us. And there's something, there's a flavor or a texture to the word rescue that does something inside of us that speaks to that epic drama.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I've been rescued. I've got to go tell everybody.
And do something.
And do something with that.
You know, we have one of our favorite lines is Lewis in Mere Christianity when he talks about, you know, the story of Christianity is the story of how the rightful king has landed in disguise. And then the next line is, and he calls us all to embark on a great campaign of sabotage.
Yeah. Right.
So like, once you realize there is a third person on the stage and he has enslaved me and now I'm out from it and he's enslaving others, and that the call to into friendship with Jesus is not just to have been taken out of a particular situation, but to go like blow things up. I'm in.
That's great.
You know, like I'm in. You know, like to undo everything you can of that third person on the stage's kingdom, so that other people can experience joy and freedom and happiness and goodness and beauty and all those things. A sense of mission, being recreated. You know, like not being riddled with shame. That is a noble, dramatic vision for life.
Right.
Sabotage.
Yeah. Now, how is this not just a more sort of energetic way of teaching what we've always been teaching? Do you know what I'm asking?
Maybe. Say more.
Yeah. So it seems like if you had said at one point, Father Riccardo, that you in your parish, even before you sort of set the lectionary aside and went after the whole arc of biblical history, that you were a really good teacher, and that you were dedicated to teach. I don't know that you said that you were a good teacher. You said that you were the
great teacher is probably what
great
I said.
teacher, an amazing teacher, and so and so
one of the world's best,
right? The world's best teacher, but that wasn't enough. In other words, why isn't enough just to teach? Why do we have to tell the story? And isn't that just a fancy way of teaching? What's different?
Yeah, stories are powerful. So it might be Rod Dreher in his book How Dante Can Save Your Life. I'm pretty sure it's him, but he talks about how you read a story and the impact that it has in your mind, that what we know from neuroscience now, it has the same or a similar impact as if you are actually living it.
Mm.
That's the power, one of the many powers of stories. Like, I'm in the scene. It's why most of us like to read, or maybe a better way to say it, it's why many of us are disappointed when we see a book made into a movie. Because my imagination is better than any director's.
Yeah.
And so they've done something to a scene. It's like, oh no, that's not what that scene was like. It was so different. The colors were different ways. I mean, so to hear the story, or to read the story, whether it's the Gospels, or to tell the story in a way that's compelling and attractive, it can bring somebody into the scene in a very new way. And suddenly, like you talk about worldviews all the time. We talk about worldviews all the time. I've offered you another set of lenses to look at, as opposed to just data.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I think our preaching or our teaching has been about data,
Yeah.
truths of the faith,
Yeah.
which are very important,
Or even moral precepts.
moral precepts. But until I've been given these,
Yeah.
the truths of the faith or the moral precepts, they don't have anywhere to land. There's no soil in which to grow. But now that I can see, now I want to know everything. Because now I get what it's about. So now you're going to talk about the commandments, but now I know the context of the commandments is, well, the God who gave these, that's a God who rescues. That's a God who frees. That's a God who liberates. That's a God who cares, who says, I see what's going on with these people and I am going to act. And now I bring them out of slavery, and now I give them these gifts so that they can live a happy life, as opposed to, I learned the commandments by having them on a wall and I memorized them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That didn't help.
Right.
I mean, it did, but it didn't,
Right.
right? Like location, location, location. Like, where did these things come from? And only after the story and the lenses have been given to us, I think now everything else can find a place to land and I can make sense out of it.
Yeah. It's really important. It's really important for us to get the news out, to make sure that people have heard the story. I could talk to you all day long. I really, really genuinely enjoy this exchange. But I wanted to end by seeking your counsel. And I didn't warn you about this question. And so I feel a little bit bad about that. But, in the work that we do here at the university with young people, we're constantly trying to inspire them, expressing to them how high the stakes are, all of those things. But we know that that life has a way of wearing you down, and that a kind of cynicism can set in, which can be mistaken for maturity or sort of worldly wise.
Yeah, I'm wiser now.
Yeah, I'm wiser now, and all of that. And you do a lot of work with people who have dedicated their lives to Christ and who have lost that fire. Father Paul Murray gave a lecture here some years ago on the New Lions. It was a magnificent talk, but in the midst of it, he recounted a newspaper article he had read out of Canada about priests. And he said what caught his attention was this devastating phrase that so many of them in this article, so many of them were burned out without ever having been on fire. And he said, what a devastating phrase to say about priests, to be burnt out without ever having been on fire. And you referenced, Father Riccardo, this phrase from the story of Emmaus. We had thought, the disappointment which settles into life. How do we here, have you found any way to inoculate the people with whom you work? And how could we inoculate the young people here, even if we do our job to the best of our ability and serve the Lord well and fill them up with faith? How can we equip them such that they can keep their ardor through the suffering and the sorrow and the wounds that are coming in the future and all of the things, the barbs of the arrow? To be part of this is to be in the midst of a battle, and you're going to get wounded. How do we do that? I know it's not it's a big question.
That's a great question. There's not an answer. So here's what we often say, like, I'm going to open my mouth and words are going to fall out right now. So this is not well thought out. But what comes to mind anyway, as you're asking that, are a couple things. So it's almost like I want to lead you into an encounter, and then I want to prepare you for what's coming. And I'm in my mind, I'm going back to Augustine and Augustine's Easter sermons to the newly baptized. And he would often teach them from Sirach. And I think one of my favorite passages when I was growing up was Sirach 2. You know, my child, when you aspire to serve the Lord, prepare yourself for an ordeal. And then there's this long exhortation in chapter 2 of Sirach about how as gold is tested in the fire, so chosen men are tested in the furnace of humiliation. But consider the generations of old and see, who has ever trusted in the Lord and been disappointed? Who has ever hoped in him and been let down? Who has ever called out to him and not been heard? So let us put our trust in the Lord. And so that's how Augustine would preach to people who are on fire, like, especially at that time, right? It was no small cost to become a Christian. And so I think for us just to help, especially younger people, right, to understand this is to be expected. Now, how do I protect myself? Or how do I put around myself as much help as I can so that when tough times come, because they will come, Jesus promised me these will come. So you stay in community. You make sure you got good friends. You read the Word of God. You stay close to the sacraments. And you especially remind yourself of what Jesus told me, that in this world you will have trouble, but be of great joy. I've conquered the world. So if I can hold on to those kinds of truths, then I expect them. I'm not surprised. I'm not disappointed. I expect them. And I'm able, hopefully, because of what you've taught me, to go, oh, that's right, I need friends. I got to call a friend. I got to get back to prayer.
Yeah,
I got to read the Word. Maybe I got to get back to confession. I got to make sure Mass is a part of my life. And I just got to sit with the fact that Jesus told me it was going to be hard. And I guess this is hard right now. Yeah. But he also told me he'd be with me.
Right.
You've mentioned it here already, but I remember giving a talk to a bunch of teenagers about 20 years ago. And I said, Christianity is not a dream. It is a battle, but most of us don't know that we're in a battle. And when we know that we're in a battle, that changes everything. And we sometimes say with some of our women friends, because we love St. Joan of Arc so much, put your Joan on. And by that we mean armor up and get ready. And everything starts here in the mind. Surround yourself with good people, good spiritual disciplines, and put your utmost confidence in Jesus. Nick and I were talking earlier today, Nick on our team. We were talking about our utter and total dependency upon the Holy Spirit in these days. And what keeps us pressing into what God has called us to do is because we're on our face in utter need before the Lord, just saying, I can't. You can. Please do. Please equip us for what you're calling us into. And then fill us up afresh, going back to that font of grace, sometimes in the next hour, going to the chapel. And there's an incredible freedom in that posture of utter and total dependence. Because when we step away from that and we think it's on us, that's when we're going to get hit. That's a great place to be in.
You think about these great traumas that you're, introducing these people to. So Joan's this incredible story.
Yeah.
But most of us don't want to live it.
Yeah.
I want to read it.
Right.
But wait a minute, I got rejected. I jumped out of a tower a couple times. I got betrayed. I got burned alive. I was called a heretic and a witch. But like some decades later, they said sorry.
Right. Right.
Great story, but wait a minute, but I'm in it.
Right.
But everybody wants to live in a great story, especially if you know. I think it's Fleming Rutledge who says, we may not know what the future holds.
We know who holds.
I know who holds the future.
That's right.
I don't have to be afraid.
That's right. Never be afraid. This is Corrie ten Boom, remember, who was one of the righteous among the nations, a Dutch clockmaker, who rescued so many Jews in Holland. And she said, never be afraid to entrust an unknown future to a known God.
Amen.
Amen.
Very beautiful.
What a great word for that.
And she said, anxiety doesn't empty the future of its danger. It empties the present of its peace. So,
Take a battle.
Powerful.
yeah. This question of being in a battle, I think, is exactly right.
Yeah.
It's exactly right. In our introduction to the audio project, the Christian Mythic Narrative,
Yes.
we tell the story from Walker Percy of going to Greece.
Yes.
And it's a difference. And maybe this is the answer, which you're providing for how to inoculate our young people to see your life as a soldier, not as a tourist.
Yeah.
This is the ultimate.
That's beautiful.
And so it's not just about the story of God, it's about the story of my life too.
There's one more thing that comes to mind as I'm hearing you talk, and I think I shared it with you in a conversation we had on podcast, that courage is simply fear that has prayed.
Mm.
And there's something about the power of fear to paralyze us in the moment of battle.
Yeah.
But when we relinquish fear, the enemy trembles. Who doesn't want to cause the enemy to tremble? And so just to pray for the grace of courage.
That's right.
And then, of course, the wisdom to do what it is God's
I
asking
want that
us
on a
to
mug.
do. Courage is fear that is prayed. You got
Mary,
it.
you're anointed because everybody's telling our young people safety first, safety first, safety first. But maybe courage.
Courage.
Maybe courage.
Courage. I remember I was praying before a situation, and I heard Joan in my mind saying, "Get on your horse." And I said, "Joan, I can't even get my leg up," But God is so merciful.
Yeah.
He takes us along the way just ever so gently. And so we might find it hard right now to saddle up. But maybe the first step is just putting your foot in the stirrup.
Yeah.
And then he's going to ask mightier things as we get deeper on the journey. So we have a merciful and patient God. Praise God, right?
And all of us involved in ministry need to depend upon that because we're putting the stirrup, the foot in the stirrup every day. And the Lord is leading us on perilous ways, but always protected. Always
Amen.
Protected by His mercy.
And our guardian angel's right there. Like,
That's
"Go ahead,
right.
I'll boost you up."
That's right. Father Riccardo and Mary, it's wonderful to be with you
Oh, what
today.
a
Thanks for
joy.
your visit to the campus of the University of Mary.
It's
Great
been
to be with
lovely.
you.
God bless you. Thank you.